All right, let's get right into it. Welcome to a journey that might just completely flip your fundamental assumptions about money upside down. Today, we're unpacking the highly provocative financial philosophies of Professor Jiang Shikun. Now, fair warning, this isn't your standard run-of-the-mill financial advice. Instead, we're going to explore what he calls the hidden money game. Let's dive in and discover how wealth is actually built, preserved, and sometimes entirely lost, according to this totally unconventional framework. Okay, let's jump straight into the deep end. Why does saving your whole life still leave you broke? It's a seriously frustrating question, right? But it's the absolute core hook of Professor Jiang's theories. I mean, we've all been handed the exact same script. Go to school, work hard, save a chunk of your paycheck, and eventually you'll be sitting comfortably. But look around today. Millions of people are playing by those exact rules, literally doing everything right, and yet they're barely keeping their heads above water. Inflation just eats away at those savings, the cost of living absolutely skyrockets, and that finish line, it just keeps moving further and further away. To get why this happens, we really have to look at the two totally different games being played out there. On one side, we have conventional wisdom, working hard and saving. It's this very visible linear treadmill where you're just trading your time for a fixed amount of currency and then trying to stockpile it. But then contrast that with the other side, the hidden money game. This is the game Jiang argues most people don't even know exists. It isn't about hoarding cash under a mattress. It's about understanding how capital actually moves, how these massive systems operate, and how the rules of reality are structured by the people at the very top. One game relies on manual labor and hopeful saving, while the other, it relies entirely on strategy, asset positioning, and rule manipulation.
Section 1. The traditional wealth trap and the illusion of saving.
Jiang puts it incredibly bluntly here, the retirement trap. Why saving your whole life still leaves you broke. His central argument is that working hard is a fundamentally flawed game plan if your wealth is tied to a fiat currency that's just constantly losing its value. We really need to understand why the methods that worked flawlessly 50 years ago are failing so profoundly today. You're essentially running on a treadmill, but someone else controls the speed dial, and they just keep turning it up faster and faster. The whole concept of a comfortable retirement funded solely by your lifetime savings? It's becoming an outdated economic myth. It's a trap, keeping the masses laboring under a completely false premise.
So what does this all mean? Well, the crucial takeaway is why most Americans can't get rich anymore. The old economic playbook has officially expired. When the cost of basic essential assets like housing and healthcare skyrockets past wage growth at such staggering, unbelievable rates, the math literally just stops working. Jiang points out that without understanding these larger macroeconomic forces, the average person is playing a game they are mathematically guaranteed to lose. It's not about a lack of effort, it's not about character. It's simply about applying your effort in the wrong direction using a totally obsolete set of rules.
Let's move to Section 2. Breaking the silent rules and the mental game of money.
This right here is a fascinating paradox. Why do smart people stay poor, while average people often get rich? Jiang points out that highly intelligent people are usually excellent rule followers. They are deeply conditioned by the education system to seek the one right answer, to color nicely inside the lines, and to wait for permission. Conversely, sometimes people with just average academic intelligence become incredibly wealthy. Why? Because they are willing to question the system. They don't wait around for permission. They figure out the silent rules of the rich, rules that are absolutely never explicitly taught in schools, and they break the conventional rules that keep the smart people chained to their desks. And this leads us to a wonderfully counterintuitive concept from the sources: being lazy but ambitious. Now, actually scratch that. It doesn't mean sitting on the couch waiting for a check to magically appear in the mail. In Jiang's vocabulary, it means you are way too ambitious to settle for mediocrity, but you're lazy enough to refuse endless, grueling manual labor to get there. Because of that, you are forced to become incredibly efficient. You actively look for leverage, you build systems. You make your money work for you because you absolutely refuse to spend your entire life working for money. It is all about maximizing your output while completely minimizing your direct linear input. So, how do you actually pull this off? Well, first you have to understand reality control. You have to recognize exactly who is making the current economic rules and who ultimately benefits from them. Once you finally see the trap for what it is, step 2 is to break their rules. You literally have to stop playing the game that was designed to keep you stuck. And finally, step 3, play the hidden game. This means focusing only on the strategic games that actually build real wealth, completely filtering out the constant noisy distractions of consumerism and traditional corporate ladder climbing. 33. This number is the mathematical heart of the entire strategy we are exploring today. It represents a historical blueprint for wealth preservation that has literally survived centuries of economic turmoil. Section 3. The 33-33-33 wealth system, or how money quietly reproduces itself. And this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. This framework is often referred to in Zhang's sources as the Jewish wealth ratio. The principle is profoundly simple but incredibly resilient. You divide your capital into perfect thirds. 1/3 goes directly into active business or commerce, things that generate immediate active cash flow. The next third is kept in liquid assets or cash reserves for sudden emergencies or, those unexpected golden opportunities. And the final third, that goes into hard assets, historically things like land or real estate, tangible resources that hold their value completely outside the fiat system. By balancing your wealth across these thirds, you protect yourself from total ruin while creating an environment where your money can just quietly reproduce itself safely. Moving to Section 4, preparing for economic collapse and defensive asset planning. Now, Professor Zhang's macro analysis does come with some extremely stark warnings, specifically the potential for World War III and a US dollar crash. Whether you agree with this forecast or find it a bit extreme, this geopolitical tension is the exact context in which Zhang frames his entire wealth strategy. He argues that unsustainable debt levels and global conflicts are driving us toward a massive systemic fracture. In his view, understanding this isn't about fear-mongering, it's just about calculated preparation. If the fiat system actually fails, you need a solid plan that doesn't rely on paper money. When we look back at predictive history, a super clear pattern emerges. During massive economic downturns, everything else fails. Fiat currency, overleveraged stocks, paper wealth, they all crash. But conversely, there are 4 asset classes that have historically doubled during every single depression. While the broader market is in total panic mode, these defensive assets, things that hold intrinsic human value, regardless of whatever government happens to be in charge, they often fly in the exact opposite direction as people naturally flee to safety. Building on that history, Zhang suggests 5 specific assets you absolutely must own before a currency crisis hits. While the specifics obviously vary person to person, the underlying logic always points directly to tangible wealth. We're talking precious metals with a thousands of years track record, productive land, essential survival commodities, and perhaps most importantly of all, investments in your own resilient business infrastructure and personal skills. The ultimate goal here is to move away from digital illusions and anchor your capital in physical reality, stuff that actually survives when paper economies burn to the ground. Wow, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from the illusion of the retirement trap, to the lazy but ambitious mindset, to the 33-33-33 rule, and finally, defensive planning. So I'm going to leave you with this one question. Are you still playing the old game, or are you ready for the hidden rules? Professor Zhang's material really forces us to hold a mirror up to our own financial habits. The system isn't going to save you. True wealth requires a massive mental shift and taking absolute control of your reality. Think very carefully about which game you are going to be playing tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.